Vamos então para a última apresentação do nosso pequeno seminário, do David Sim, do Gehl Architects. Deixa eu só abrir aqui. Just one second.
Good morning, everyone. It is very, very nice to be here. I'm very honoured to be on this panel. I have to thank the three previous speakers, to Gary, Elio, Georgia. You created a kind of intellectual platform for this morning. It's going to be very hard to follow you. It's fantastic to come to an event where we can remind ourselves that there was a guy once called Marx. It's a long time since we heard those kind of things. I think what's interesting for us to work here in Latin America is you're people who understand ideas. I think the concentration of Nobel Prizes in Latin America is just one of the signs that we can talk about ideas and concepts. I'm really grateful for creating this intellectual situation that we can talk about the idea of the city. If I introduce myself, my name is David Sim. I'm a Scotsman, and that's the first problem for the two guys in the translation box, because there's an accent. And the second problem is also here, I have a bit of a throat problem, so my voice is quite ugly to listen to, so I recommend the much more beautiful Portuguese translation. And there's a third problem, because it takes 30% longer to say things in Portuguese than English. And so there's possibly, I will try to speak slowly so that the guys don't get into trouble in the box. The first picture here is a picture of people dancing tango in a public space. And I don't, maybe put a few more lights off, or with upset the cameraman. But this is Sweden. Who would have imagined that in Sweden people would dance tango in a public space? And what's this got to do with this very serious subject of urbanism and sustainability? Can we put the ceiling lights up, maybe? But I would say dancing in a public space is a symptom that people are happy. People are staying, spending time, walking slowly, sitting, watching, spending time, doing unexpected things. This is a symptom that people are comfortable. And I think we're very interested in this. We come to this anthropological study. And this is not about efficiency, because it's very easy when we hear of this incredible challenge of urbanizing the world, that we have this challenge, it must be efficient. But we know in so many of the important aspects of life, we're not efficient. We don't make love to our partners efficiently. Well, I hope not. You know, we don't tell a good night story to our children efficiently, because the most important things we do thoroughly, appropriately, creatively, and possibly with a greater kind of creativity, a greater kind of efficiency. Because when you tell your good night story to a child, you don't just read the pages, you make references, you give little moral lessons, you talk about the day, and maybe the story takes 10 minutes longer, but you do more things. Maybe your walk takes 10 minutes longer, but you do more things. So we're looking for another kind, a more complex kind of efficiency. And this challenge about density, about urbanization, we have to learn to get on better, do better at living together in places. And Winston Churchill, I'm sure he wasn't the first, to ask this question about what are the places we're making? What kind of places are we creating, and how are we responding to the places we create? Now this man is Gehl. He was my boss, he was my mentor, now he's my partner. Jan is a wonderful story. Jan was a modernist architect, like everybody in the 1960s, but he met a woman and he fell in love. Jan fell in love with an environmental psychologist, and she said, I will never date an architect, because you guys know nothing about people. You don't understand what it is to be a human being. And he tried to explain about modernism and brutalism and all of these heroic ventures, but she kept saying, no, this is not about art. This is about biology. This is about sociology. These are scientific facts to understand human beings. I would say I've been studying the built. I feel like I have to say this because I've got such experienced colleagues with me. So I've been working with the city for 40 years as well. This was using. It was very common in the 1970s that we used prefabricated building systems. Quite experimental, funky colours. But this thing, I think all of us in our lives, we can remember when we were all children and we were all urbanists. And we all built environments we instinctively knew how to build. But there's a danger, and I think this is what you see in every city in the world. You see the great heroic architects and planners standing over the model, making this fantastic composition. And just getting the proportion right. And we stand above the model like gods, and we can create the perfect composition. But what happens down on the ground, and what does it turn into? What kind of environment do we create? And this was the kind of environment that Jan's later wife, the environmental psychologist, talked about, where children couldn't find their way home because everything looked the same. And I think maybe I have to mention Brasília since I'm here. And I have to tell you that one of the reasons I became an architect was because of Brasília. As a child growing up in Europe, Brasília was something you imagined, something amazing, something wonderful. Like for me, the first time I came to Brasília was like seeing the pyramids. It really is a huge experience. And that this amazing plan, which looks like a bird or like an airplane. It's something that everybody can remember. So I think as a capital, Brasília is a huge success. As a symbol for Brazilians, as a symbol internationally. But we have to accept that maybe down on the ground, where you cannot see the bird, where you cannot see this airplane, something's missing. And I cannot stress, because walking around in the suburbs, in these satellite towns, where you see the children even know these symbols. And the value of the symbol is enormous. So I have to say this because I'm standing in the shadow of Niemeyer, but we have to remember that we have to take care of the everyday thing as well. There's the everyday life as well that we have to consider to make, because it's not every day we go to the Senate. It's not every day we go to the Foreign Office. There are more everyday things we do, and we have to consider those things. And this was what interested Jan Gehl. What was this life, this ordinary everyday life, the life between the buildings. And what worries us, Jan was critical of these places that were designed in the 60s and 70s, which forgot the human scale. But when I see all these green cities that they're talking about, this green urbanism, apart from the green stuff between the buildings, it looks pretty much like what we were doing in the 50s and 60s, and I wonder what we learned. And this is how the Gehl Architects Office started. We were a group of young students who felt that this theory, these observations about the human environment could be applied to real projects. And we're a small office, just 30 people. We work, right now we have live projects on all 5 continents. But all of our projects are in partnership with local experts, because we would never dare to draw a line on another city without working with the people who know their climate, their culture, their architectural standards, and so on. So we work always in partnership. And all I'm saying is I'm really hoping that in the next months maybe I can get to do something in São Paulo, get to work with George, who's now become one of my heroes. We have a mantra: life first, then spaces and buildings. We have to understand human beings and life, how we move, how we get to work, how we get to school, what we do in our free time. We have to understand the life we want to live. Ricardo said, what kind of city do you want? We have to live to know the life we want before we can make the spaces, and then the buildings last. The spaces, and also we said, the street outside your house is also public space. All of those things to make a good city. Our work now is very grateful. Like Gary, you did the introduction for me. Our most famous work is in New York with the Department of Transportation. Times Square, one of the most famous squares in the world. When you get there, maybe it wasn't as impressive as you thought. 90% of the space on Times Square was car space. but 90% of the people who used Times Square were pedestrians. And because there wasn't time to wait, with paint, as Gary said, just with paint, we were able to create public space, which would give people a completely different kind of city that they could never have imagined. You know, and the importance, especially in a highly segregated society where a bag lady can sit next to a German tourist and a New Yorker, all in the same space in a civilized way. And this is the kind of the basis for a democratic society. Public space is at the centre. And our other work is known as Christchurch. After the earthquake in New Zealand, we worked on a vision for the city based on the citizens' own idea of a city built at human scale. So I once talked about some very basic things, and I feel my language, after the intellectual preface that's been made, I'm going to talk about some very, very simple things. I'm going to talk about what makes human beings work. And I'm sure all of us know, or our children or our grandchildren will tell us, what makes a good place for pandas, or dolphins, or the condor. You know, we know about all these different animals. But what about this animal? What do we know? If you want to nurture small human beings, what makes a good environment? And you're going to say, well, you're this Scotsman, I'm a Scotsman living in Denmark. What do you know about Brazil? Because cultures are different, of course. You only need to take the plane from Rio to Sao Paulo to experience a different culture. From Sao Paulo to Brasília, different culture. So I mean, even within cities, you'll find different cultures. So cultures, of course, are unique everywhere. And I live in Scandinavia, so I know about climate. I was a little bit shocked that there was some rain this morning. I know that if you want to make me feel more at home, but it's really not necessary, But what we know, if we study the anthropology of human beings, that the way we use space, the way we inhabit space is universal. And the reason for this is basically we're all the same animal. We're all Homo sapiens, hunter-gatherers. And what's important is we are the animals that, whether it was by luck or by chance, somehow managed to learn to balance on two legs. We learned to balance on two legs, and we managed to move on two legs. And our front paws, these things we had for walking, we could suddenly use to carry things. We could throw a stone and kill a pig and carry it home. We could make a tool and do things. And because of this ability to stand on two legs and walk, we could conquer the planet. We could outsmart the faster, the animals with bigger teeth, we could outsmart everyone because of this ability to walk, to move and carry things. Hunter-gatherers. And this is what we are, 100,000 years. And even though we now live in cities, that hasn't changed much. The most important day in your life, around 1 year, 13, 14 months, you take your first steps. This is my godson, and I was there at the moment where he took his first steps. And his father started crying. I didn't really understand. He took his phone and was like, Mama, he's walking. Now Aris saw a puppy. He saw a puppy, and he was so excited about seeing a puppy, he forgot that he couldn't walk, and he started walking. And of course, he's a small hunter-gatherer. He's exploring the world, looking for opportunities. Puppies, okay, now he's 7 years old. Now he's looking at cars. Soon it will be girls. And then I guess it will be cars again. But we have to understand that the basis, we have to make spaces that are good for walking, to understand this ability to walk. And it's fascinating. The most ancient marks on the earth of human habitation are not buildings, they're paths. They're the trading routes, the paths. And of course, we can still see these mysterious marks on the earth. We can see how human beings move in the most logical, sensible way. They know where they're going, and using the minimum